The small diner on the corner of Maple Street was never too busy on cold winter nights. The bell above the door jingled softly each time a customer entered, and the scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon hung in the air. Ethan, a 26-year-old waiter, had worked there for almost 4 years. He wasn't rich, not even close, his old car barely started on most mornings, and his tiny apartment was filled with second-hand furniture. But Ethan had something money couldn't buy, a kind heart that refused to ignore people in need. That night, as snow fell quietly outside, he noticed a family sitting by the window, a man, his wife, and 2 little kids. Their clothes were worn, their cheeks pink from the cold. The father kept glancing at the menu, his brow furrowed, his fingers nervously rubbing the corner of a faded wallet. The mother tried to smile at her children, pretending everything was fine, but Ethan saw through it. He'd seen that look before, the look of parents trying to protect their kids from the weight of the world. When Ethan approached their table, the man cleared his throat. "Hi, we'll just have a couple of pancakes and some hot chocolate for the kids," he said softly, avoiding eye contact. His wife gently placed a hand on his arm, whispering something about maybe sharing one more plate, but he shook his head. Ethan smiled warmly. "No problem at all, sir. Take your time." He jotted down the order and walked back to the kitchen, his chest tightening. He knew what that silence meant, the kind that came when someone couldn't afford more but didn't want to show it. As the cook flipped pancakes behind him, Ethan glanced back at the family. The kids were laughing now, playing with sugar packets, while their parents sat quietly, trying to look cheerful. The sight stirred something deep inside him. He'd been there once, years ago, before his mother passed away, when they'd sat in a diner just like this, pretending they weren't hungry because they could only afford one meal to share. When the time came to bring the bill, Ethan made his decision. He didn't even hesitate. He walked to the register, pulled out his worn wallet, and paid for their meal himself. It wasn't much, $24.75, but it was all he had left until his next paycheck. He didn't care. When the man called him over to settle the bill, Ethan simply smiled. "It's already taken care of," he said softly. The man frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Ethan shrugged lightly. "Someone wanted to treat your family tonight. You don't owe anything." The man looked stunned. His lips trembled as he tried to form words. I can't accept that," he whispered, his voice shaking. Ethan smiled again, his eyes kind but firm. "You already did. Just promise me one thing. When you can, do something kind for someone else. That's all." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the man's wife pressed a hand to her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. The children, too young to understand, simply grinned, thinking maybe it was all a game. As the family left, the man turned back at the door. Snowflakes clung to his shoulders, his eyes glistening under the yellow diner lights. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You have no idea what this means." Ethan just nodded. "Merry Christmas," he said quietly. When the door closed, the diner felt warmer somehow. Ethan returned to clearing tables, humming softly, though his wallet was empty. But that night, he felt richer than ever. The next day, the bell above the diner door jingled again. It was just before lunch, and Ethan was wiping down a counter when he saw a familiar face, the same man from the night before, only this time, he was alone. He looked cleaner, more rested, and there was a quiet determination in his eyes. Ethan smiled in surprise. "Hey, welcome back," he said. "Forgot something?" The man shook his head slowly, a small smile playing at his lips. "No," he said, "I came to talk to you." Ethan raised an eyebrow, curious. "Sure, everything okay?" The man nodded, then glanced around as if to make sure no one was listening. He pulled a folded envelope from his coat pocket and placed it gently on the counter. "You didn't know it last night," he began softly, "but you helped us in more ways than you can imagine." Ethan frowned, confused. "You didn't have to." "Please," the man interrupted, his voice trembling slightly. "Just hear me out." He took a deep breath, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Last night was supposed to be our last meal together before I made a decision I'm not proud of. I lost my job 2 months ago, and I've been trying to hide it from my kids. I didn't know how to keep going. But when you paid for that meal, you reminded me that there's still kindness in this world." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Sir, the man held up a hand, stopping him. "That small act, it gave me hope. And I made a promise to myself last night that I wouldn't give up." Ethan didn't know what to say. The diner was quiet except for the faint sound of sizzling bacon in the back. He looked down at the envelope. "What's this?" he asked softly. The man smiled faintly. "A thank you," he said. "Please open it after your shift." And with that, he turned to leave. Before Ethan could stop him, the man was already out the door, disappearing into the cold winter light. Ethan stood there for a long moment, the envelope in his hand, wondering what could possibly be inside. He didn't know it yet, but that simple act of kindness was about to change both their lives forever. Ethan waited until his shift ended before opening the envelope. It sat in his pocket all afternoon, weighing heavier than it should. Every time he reached for his pen or took an order, he could feel its corners pressing into the fabric of his apron, a quiet reminder of that mysterious man and his emotional words. By the time the last customer left and the cook flipped the "closed" sign on the diner door, Ethan finally sat at one of the empty booths, his hands trembling slightly. Outside, snow was still falling, soft and endless. The world seemed hushed, like it was waiting too. He carefully tore open the envelope. Inside, there was a folded piece of paper, and something else. A check. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The number written on it made his heart stutter. $10,000. For a moment, he just stared at it, unable to believe his eyes. Then he unfolded the letter. "Greater than Ethan, you don't know me, but I'll never forget you. I wasn't just a father who'd lost his job, I was a man who'd lost faith. Last night, when you paid for our meal, you didn't just feed my children. You reminded me that kindness still exists in a world that often feels cold. What you don't know is that before I lost my job, I owned a small construction company. We built homes, real homes, where families could start over. But when the economy turned, I lost everything. I was drowning in debt, my workers scattered, and I felt like I'd failed everyone. When I left your diner, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about you, a young man who had nothing but still gave something. I realized I'd been given a second chance to rebuild, not just my business, but my heart. So, I called an old partner today, and we're starting again. And I want you to be a part of it. The check is not charity. It's a thank you, and a down payment. I want to offer you a position with my new company. Someone with your heart is worth more than any degree or resume. If you accept, meet me tomorrow morning at the address below. Mark Collins. Ethan read the letter 3 times before the meaning finally sank in. His eyes burned with tears. He had given away his last $25 without thinking, and somehow, that act had come back 100-fold. He leaned back in the booth, laughing through the tears. "Mom," he whispered quietly, looking up at the ceiling as if his late mother could hear him, "you were right. What goes around really does come around." That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He lay awake in his small apartment, the check and letter on the table beside his bed. The heater clanked weakly in the corner, but he didn't mind the cold. His heart was too full. The next morning, he put on his cleanest shirt, still a little wrinkled, and drove his beat-up car through the snow to the address written on the letter. It led him to a modest office building with a sign that read, "Collins Construction, Building Hope." Mark was already there, standing outside with a cup of coffee in his hand. When he saw Ethan pull up, his face broke into a genuine smile. "Ethan," he called out, walking over and shaking his hand firmly. "You came." "Of course," Ethan said, still a bit dazed. "I almost didn't believe the letter was real." Mark chuckled softly. "Neither did I, to be honest. I haven't felt this alive in months. That night at the diner changed everything for me." He led Ethan inside. The office was small but full of energy, blueprints pinned on walls, laptops open, the faint smell of fresh paint. It wasn't a big company yet, but it was a beginning. "I told my team about you," Mark said. "About what you did, and they all agreed. We need people like you around. People who still believe in doing the right thing, even when no one's watching." Ethan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "I don't know what to say," he admitted quietly. "Say yes," Mark said with a smile. "Help us build something good." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then yes," he said, shaking Mark's hand again. "Let's do it." From that day forward, everything changed. Ethan started working with Mark's team, helping with customer service and project management, small tasks at first, but his dedication shone through. He arrived early, stayed late, and treated every client like family. Word began to spread about Collins Construction, not just about their quality work, but their kindness. They offered discounts to struggling families, rebuilt damaged homes at cost, and even started a program that trained unemployed young people in construction skills. Ethan spearheaded that initiative himself. Months passed, and business began to bloom. Ethan found himself earning more than he ever thought possible. He paid off his mother's medical debts, bought himself a reliable car, and even started saving to buy a small home. But more than money, he'd found something priceless: purpose. One afternoon, about 6 months later, the diner bell on Maple Street jingled again. The same one where it had all begun. Ethan walked in, his construction jacket dusted with sawdust, a tired but proud smile on his face. The waitress behind the counter looked up. "Haven't seen you in a while, Ethan," she said warmly. "The usual coffee," he nodded. "Yeah, and, can you bring me the bill for the table by the window too?" She glanced at the young couple sitting there with a toddler. They looked tired, their clothes simple. "You sure?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled. "Yeah, someone once did the same for me." He paid quietly, left a generous tip, and walked out into the evening snow. He didn't wait to be thanked, didn't leave his name. Later that night, as he sat in his truck watching the lights flicker across town, Ethan thought about how one small moment of kindness could change a life forever, not just his, but countless others. And somewhere, he knew, his mother would be smiling, proud of the man he had become. Because sometimes, it takes a stranger's compassion to remind the world that hope still exists, and that no good deed, no matter how small, ever truly goes unnoticed.